Well, welcome to our panel on seamless innovations at scale. We have a great lineup of panelists for you today. To start, I'd like to ask each of you to introduce yourself.
Well, good morning. My name is Reshea Deloatch. I am the Executive Director of the Solutions Development Directorate within the Office of the Chief Information Officer at the Department of Homeland Security. Thanks for having me today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lorelie Diestro. I'm the Deputy Director of Digital Innovations at the Center for Naval Analyses, or CNA. I lead the team responsible for ushering in and maintaining digital solutions on the ServiceNow platform. We implemented ServiceNow in August of last year, so we're rather young in our digital transformation, but I did just want to mention this is the second time that I've implemented ServiceNow at an organization. Prior to joining CNA, I implemented ServiceNow at another nonprofit whose line of work is very similar to CNA, and it was there that I got to work with various areas of the business on their digital transformation and implemented the platform the first time.
Good morning, my name is Jesse White. I'm the CEO of Intact Technology, ServiceNow's Federal Partner of the Year this year.
I'm Jonathan White, Commander in the U.S. Coast Guard. I am leading the Coast Guard's journey into the cloud and using data for decisions. We're about 1.5 years into that journey, and we are delivering exceptional results that we'll talk about today.
Thank you. Reshea, I'll start with you. So historical, traditional ways of engaging with government agencies, such as in person, paper-based, sometimes can be frustrating for folks because of their consumer experience, which is more personal, it's more automated. How have you at DHS created a culture of innovation that is giving greater access, elevating efficiencies, and providing a digital-first approach?
All right, a culture of innovation at DHS. So I would say it kind of takes me back to 2012, 2010, 2012-ish, when we were implementing, replacing a paper-based system for the I-9 forms for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. I mean, you got to think about it. We've been replacing paper-based systems for over a decade, and we've been in business for a long time in terms of modernization. So these days, we're doing more things like, I don't know if you all have seen in the news, a couple weeks ago, TSA is modernizing even their self-check process at Reed International Airport, where we're not only are we deploying technology that enables folks to actually process themselves, but we also are observing that process and becoming more agile. I think one thing, especially me in the solutions space, I have to not be afraid to break things. I mean, it's part of the process. I do like what I heard from the Admiral this morning in the keynote about risk. Sometimes we are taking very calculated risk with deploying very large systems that serve the public. And what I like to see from our partners at TSA, those things that they're doing, which is deploying solutions and then also observing how the customers, the consumers, the public reacts to those solutions and making it an iterative process, because modernization is iterative. It's agile. We already know our favorite word in tech is agile. But that is that process of not only deploying the technology, but observing. Did it do what you thought it would? It might meet the requirement, but it might not be that usable. So when we think about the President's Executive Order 14058, for improving the customer experience overall for the public, those are the types of things that we're doing at DHS. We're making sure that folks are not afraid to deploy solutions and then take a step back to see, are they working, and then enhance them in the process.
That's great. Commander Wright, so the Coast Guard has a unique designation of being the only military organization as a part of DHS and a part of DoD. How is integrating new solutions into existing frameworks versus a complete rip and replace helped with citizen experience and employee productivity?
Yeah, let me describe the Coast Guard situation here first, right? So we have 1 foot in DoD, 1 foot in DHS. Our IT systems comply with DoD requirements. Our data privacy, by and large, complies with DHS requirements. We also report and receive funding from DHS, so we report our funding spend to DHS. So we have a very weird environment to deal with when we talk about systems. And what I'm doing is I'm the bull in the china shop here, right? My job is to establish the framework and the foundation for the future so that we can do the rip and replace or do the transformation of our existing systems into the modernized applications that we really crave. And so what I've done is I've established a trifecta of services, platform services. Foundation to that is our cloud environments, our commercial cloud environments. We are multi-cloud, and we are complying with the DISA Secure Cloud Reference Guide. So that is a huge challenge, right? That in and of itself is a mountain to climb. We have climbed and achieved that success. The second part of that trifecta is a software factory and low-code platforms. So I need a landing spot for my developers who are going to build those experiences. I want to give them options in order to deliver the right capability to the right mission area. The Coast Guard has 11 statutory missions. One of them is defense. The other 10 are decidedly civilian in nature. We do search and rescue, we do interdiction of migrants, we do drug enforcement. And so when you think about that constellation of missions, there are so many different stakeholders that require different ways to interact with not only the general public, but also between themselves. And so what the third pillar that we have is our data fabric. And so making data foundational to those missions, sharing data across the 11 mission sets, because sometimes you need to know what's going on in other areas of the Coast Guard, but then serving that up as an application. And I call applications portals to the data, right? We want to build an experience for the end user, whether that's an external user or an internal user, to be able to just interact with that data in some meaningful way and make it easy for them to do that.
Sir, would you say those integrations are seamless, or is that a goal that you're working towards?
Yeah, seamless is definitely not the word I would use.
Set you up on that one.
Yeah, so this is my challenge, right? The challenge is to, from external appearances, it should look seamless, right? The developers should have an amazing experience on the platform. The customers migrating their systems into the cloud should have a white glove service onboarding process, and we're putting these things in place. I'm very focused on customer, whether that customer is an internal customer or an external customer. And then from the data side, we're doing data mesh concepts, so we're establishing data domain owners, empowering them to own and classify and deal with their data, but then serve that back to the organization as data products. That is a mental and cultural shift for 99% of the organization, okay? Most people are used to using the application they used for the last 10 years. Putting something new in front of them is very disruptive and uncomfortable for them, and we have to acknowledge that. And so when we deploy a new capability, it should be deployed with training, it should be deployed with a spec sheet, if you will, like a fact sheet. Why is this better for you? What am I doing to make your job easier? And I think that eases the transition a little bit, but it certainly is not going to be seamless. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes switchboard-type activities that we're kind of plugging the holes and making sure everything looks good on the outside.
Sure. So I'd like to stay with you for a minute. So you have all these different solutions. How do you integrate those into military operations?
Yeah,
You have military operators, you have decision makers relying on real-time information. What's the greatest impact on digitizing these manual processes have they had on branch operations, fleet readiness?
Yeah, so I mean, who's emailed Excel spreadsheets around, data calls, whatever. That all is a huge context shift to military operations, to real-time operations. What we need to do is focus on integrating that experience, that sort of data flow, into the operation itself. And we shouldn't have people do swivel chair operations where they're using disparate applications to do particular tasks. That's a focus of mine. It's not really my current focus, but from a delivery of services and being an IT steward, I'm absolutely focused on that aspect of things. But the real-time information is the part of that question is really the important part. Flowing information inside the agency is somewhat easy. We control end-to-end the flow, but we actually share information with both DoD partners and DHS partners and other federal agencies. That interface boundary is where problems occur, right? There's trust relationships between agencies, there's data format standards, even taxonomy and what a data field means is incredibly important. And I think one thing we need to focus collectively on in the government is defining those standards, but not to the level where it's constrictive. We need to be able to define it for flow. And then that's one thing I'm looking at and how, for example, CJAD C2 for the defense side. That's a great opportunity to define those interface standards and be able to flow information seamlessly across organizations.
I appreciate it. Reshea, from a DHS standpoint, does that resonate as far as the partner relationship with Coast Guard?
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, we do work together. I mean, within my solution space, I host the cloud that a lot of our partners operate from, the identity systems. I'm in headquarters, so we touch it all. So yes, a lot of that resonates with me.
Thank you. Lorelie, I'd like to transition to you. So the Center for Naval Analysis might not be as well known as some of the other organizations. Could you tell us a little bit about CNA? And I'd also like to pose the same question that Commander Wright answered, but I'd like to focus on the workforce. So workforces around the world are relying on real-time information. What's been the greatest impact of the digitization of manual processes on the workforce?
CNA operates the only federally funded research and development center for the Department of the Navy, and we have done decades of amazing work employing operations research to help inform the decisions of the Navy, Marine Corps, and DoD leaders. Historically, much of our workforce has been reliant on very manual and paper-based methods, and in a lot of cases reliant on legacy and aging technology. Since we've been live with ServiceNow last year, we have digitized 26 manual workflows and forms in our service catalog alone, and we certainly have a long way to go, but we have begun to pivot our attention to focus on other areas of the business beyond IT. So even now we're on our way to implementing SPM next month, and we also have other applications on our roadmap like workplace service delivery and customer relationship management. And what really set us on this path, of course, is that it is a well-known and well-established business need, this need to digitally transform and modernize our technology. As far as greatest areas of impact, there's three that I'd like to highlight, the first of which, as we've seen since August, and as I've seen also at my prior organization, it's this enhanced employee experience that we're able to deliver using the platform. We're able to have faster response times to our employees and customers. We empower our employees to self-serve, to be able to track work, track progress, access reliable information. Reliable, I think, is key. Reliable information quickly and easily. And all of these things, of course, prior, were possible but challenging to come by. But now with ServiceNow, it's made a positive impact on our overall customer satisfaction. The second greatest area of impact I'd like to mention is we've seen significant improvements in our productivity and efficiency within our workforce. We're able to, look at processes, and if it takes X number of steps to achieve a task, we're looking at how can we condense that down, how can we streamline it. So we're reducing manual efforts, and in some cases, we're trying to eliminate tasks that are of little to no value. Let me give you an example, kind of to what Commander White started to say earlier, was, I'm finding that portions of our workforce are very reliant on the use of email, right? So we use email and our inbox for the intake of requests, and then we're further managing our inbox to facilitate and track a workflow. And it can become a very time-consuming burden to have to work our inbox this way. We can only hope that we don't let an email, slip through the cracks, and we hope that we can get back to everyone in a timely manner. Can anyone relate to the story? So, by digitizing manual processes and, for example, moving away from this heavy reliance on email, which is kind of holding us back and not allowing us to accelerate progress. We're able to reallocate our employees' time to tasks and activities that are far more relevant, far more productive. We're making better use of our employees' working time, and when we're able to automate tasks, we're even enabling our employees to get more done in less time, if that makes sense. The last area of impact I want to touch on is also our improvements in data analysis. Simply by digitizing our data and having it stored in a central location, that alone allows us to access real-time data, up-to-date information, and present it to various levels of our organization. For example, our Tier 1 staff, our support staff, they use dashboards and reports to be able to see work as it comes in. And using those reports with real-time data, they're able to prioritize the work and get to identify what needs their attention sooner than later. I heard it said this morning, I thought it was a great point, that we also want to make sure our data is transparent. So as employees walk our halls, and if you go by the service desk area, you're going to see behind the service desk a wall of TV monitors that displays our dashboards and reports and data in real time. So we have some really nice numbers on there, in real time, how many tickets have we closed in a month and so on. But we also want people to be aware of which SLAs are approaching its breach, or which SLAs have already breached, and that number is big and red, and we always want it to be 0. When it's 0, it's green. We love green. It's just this transparency, I think, also is also key. And at the managers and management and executive levels, similarly, we're able to display data on dashboards and reports and draw metrics out of them. So, and with that, that can be really powerful, because then our leadership is able to make, well-informed and actionable decisions, and identify growth opportunities even, and that gets us into these cycles of continuous process improvement. So very, very rewarding to see unfold. The last point I want to touch on is, as we have this enhanced employee experience together with improvements in data analysis and these gains in productivity and efficiency, and as we see these things come together, what I found is that we're able to then drive more user adoption to the platform, which then leads us to be able to drive culture change forward. And that has probably been one of the most rewarding things to be able to see. It has already happened to us, where other areas of the business come to us and they want a seat at the table. They see our ServiceNow roadmap, they see where future implementations fall in fiscal years and quarters, and they say, Lorelie, what do I need to do to jump the line? Like, who do I need to talk to? So, it's a very humbling and, nice problem to have, and it leads to a lot of interesting conversations. It's for another day. But, I think that's all to say. It's really because folks see the benefits-driven results, by digitizing manual processes and making optimal use of the platform.
Lorelie, you got a lot of head nods with the email to manage workflows, so I don't think you're alone there.
Jesse, I figured that wasn't the case.
No, you're good company. Jesse, I'd like to transition to you from an industry perspective. So you work with a lot of government customers. What strategies do you see are most effective for agencies implementing to help with their transformation journey?
Yeah. So first, to set the context, I'll just share the way that we think as Intact. So from our perspective, we are a community within this community in a lot of ways. And there's something really fascinating that we think about in this community, that if you look at where we are right now in human history, we have an enormous amount of uncertainty around us. There are threats from everywhere. We have the rise of AI. We have foreign actors that are already at digital war with us in different ways. There's a tremendous amount kind of out on the horizon. And the way that we think about this is that in order for our nation and the US federal government to be ready to meet these challenges, we as a community actually have the power fundamentally to transform these agencies so that they can move faster, right? They can address these threats. They can serve the people that are, serve the people in the nation and serve the people that are serving and protecting us along the way. So it's big. Like, we have a lot of pressure on us in a lot of ways. And by the way, everybody wants us to do it really, really fast. The cool thing is, we now have the technology, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on stage at a ServiceNow conference, but we literally have the technology to move extremely fast, right? The ServiceNow platform has enormous amounts of out-of-the-box technology that can be deployed to solve problems and like drive real transformational outcomes very, very quickly. But the way in which that's done matters. And the old approach of transformation in silos doesn't work fundamentally. It just takes too much time, and I'll share an analogy with you. This is what we think about. So before, when we were transforming in silos, it would be like we're going to remodel the kitchen. Okay, not a big deal. You get a couple guys in the van, you don't have to do too much planning, share your needs, and they go and they do the work. Well, now basically, we as leaders are being asked to renovate the entire house at the same time, right? IT, HR, facilities, mission side workflow, just pieces everywhere. And the approach that we now need to get set up for this fundamentally needs to be focused on alignment. So we need an alignment layer over the top of this that, just like if you were renovating your house at the same time, helps everything move smoothly. And I'll talk through this. So we think about it in 4 different parts. The first piece of it is that we need to have a really high-speed, low-drag, like architecture and strategic planning capability. So there are needs across the organization that are constantly coming in. Specifically for the platform, there are needs that we need to meet in the organization with the platform. And by the way, the platform is growing and changing and getting better every 6 months, right, with these major releases. So there's a lot of moving parts going on. And the idea there is that we need to take in all of these needs, consider these things, establish a blueprint, and then establish a really clear order of operations. To go back to the house analogy, if we didn't do that, the concrete guys, the painter, and the plumber may be showing up at the same time, and people don't really know what they're doing. It's going to be a mess, right? So that's really, really important first piece. And this needs to be really dynamic. We're not talking about months of planning. We're talking about days and weeks of planning, right? But really making sure that we're optimizing the use of the technology in the way that we're doing that. The second piece is that once we have that defined, we know where we're going, we understand the outcomes we're driving towards, we understand the needs of our stakeholders around us, now we need to begin to establish standards and practices. And these standards and practices are things like how design is done, how we want the user experience to be across the platform, how we want people to be enabled in the organization. Because if you have 5, 6 different projects moving at the same time simultaneously, from an end user perspective, for it to look seamless at the end of the day, we have to set up those standards and practices and enable each of those teams that as they go and do their work, they're doing it in a very consistent way, right? Fundamentally, going back to the house analogy, this ensures that when we come into the house, all the stairs are of the same height, right? If the stairs here are 10 inches and the stairs here are 8 inches, it's going to be a disaster. So these standards and practices are really, really important. The third piece of it is OCM. So we tend to think of organizational change management in different ways, but from our perspective, fundamentally, we need to align policies within the agency, or the law piece takes too long. We need to align policies within the agency, processes within the agency, and stakeholders within the agency. And the idea is that we need to be able to drive adoption literally from the executive level all the way down to the user level inside of an agency. Everybody needs to have an understanding of what's coming. They need to understand how it's going to make their life better. There's tremendous capability inside of the platform, but we all know this. The natural human resistance to change is fear. But it's actually not fear of change. They're just afraid of what it may mean for their job, right? Whether they'll be able to do their job well, whether they can perform well. And the way we think about this is that at the end of the day, the technology is extraordinary, and we can do so much with the technology. but it's actually the humans that drive the outcome. So human adoption is the value multiplier, and it's such a critical element. And the reason that we look at this needing to be done kind of at that platform strategy and governance layer, that's what we like to call it, is that you need consistency there too, right? This needs to be one beating drum, and people hearing the same message over and over again. They get past that resistance and they begin to settle down into this thing. Going back to the house analogy, I don't know that any of us are going to remodel our house without aligning our stakeholders' expectations at home, right? If we don't, they're going to show up and be like, what the hell did you do here? And what are we doing, right? So that's a really, really important component to exist at that level. And then the fourth piece fundamentally is quality assurance. So if you think about that same thing, you go to remodel your house, you have an architect or general contractor. Their job fundamentally is to check on what's going on throughout the build, right? And to get ready for different levels of testing or inspection, if you think about it, right? Making sure that we're following the standards, the manufacturer standards from ServiceNow and the best practices there. And so that's a really important piece. And that ensures at the end of the day that what you're actually getting is gonna, follow all of the alignment that you set up in the beginning. So just quickly to close that, when agencies do that well, what we see is really, really high speed movement. At the IRS last year, they deployed IT workflow, HR workflow, facilities workflow, 286 catalog items and crossed the employee life cycle in 7 months. Most agencies, that can take years to get done. CISA, very, very important agency, the cyber defense of the country, literally put this platform strategy and governance layer in 6 months ago, deployed 5 different applications across the 5 different projects that quickly, literally in 6 months. So at the end of the day, Ed, we don't necessarily think of innovation as seamless. It's hard to get to seamless, but we find that when you line everything up really well, it works more like a great zipper.
I appreciate that, Jesse. When we talk to senior leaders, a couple things top of mind are always organizational change and governance. And Commander, I wrote something down that you had said. You said staging bureaucracy at speed. And so the last question, I'll just open it up to the panel. So historically, procedural, organization, and technical boundaries within agencies and between departments have resulted in customer service shortfalls. What are some strategies to break down silos and streamline service delivery?
Yeah, I'll open with that. So within DHS, we are such a large organization. I'm in headquarters, but you think about DHS, the scope is 22 different organizations that were formulated back over 20 years ago, and you can only imagine the silos that exist. 2 of the silos are on the stage between headquarters and Coast Guard, although we're in the same organization. We have to make an effort to make sure that we are communicating. One technique that we utilize to make sure that folks are even aware of some of the policies and processes that are going on in organizations are even our hiring. For example, I came from 2 different other organizations within DHS. I've worked in USCIS, as I mentioned earlier, and then also I had a lengthy time in Customs and Border Protection before coming to headquarters. So that has given me quite a lot of knowledge to understand exactly what's happening there within even their ServiceNow environments to the headquarters ServiceNow environments, which we all have one, and getting folks to speak to each other. So that is a technique that has been utilized by senior leadership to make sure that they're actually hiring folks that have been in multiple components. Also, we are making sure that there are integrated product teams. We meet with the Coast Guard on a bi-weekly basis to even talk about financial systems that we're hosting and sharing, and making sure the financial officer is also involved in those conversations that involve systems. So that technique as well, that involves communication is a big part of it. And in addition to that, the technology piece of it, making sure that there's a single point of entry for some of these systems that the public utilizes so that there's not a lot of duplication and replication of systems. And then also making sure there's shared services. So are we building the same stuff in 22 different organizations? So that's a lot of what headquarters does to consolidate the effort across DHS.
That's great. Commander Wright.
Yeah, I wanted to leave with a thought here and a sort of a challenge. I like leaving with a little challenge. So one of my favorite books in the last couple of years I've read is Hacking Your Bureaucracy. And one of the hacks in that book is to look between the silos, right? So if you want to break down silos, you got to connect the silos, right? We don't want to tear down somebody's job, workflow, life, whatever. They might be doing some really great stuff, but the handoff between those people is really bad, right? This gets lost in the inbox. You have various workflows that we have to have a human bounce things around. And so we're attacking that problem right now with automation, right? A great place for automation is working between silos. It's a great way to ensure data quality and consistency. It's a great way to stage work for other people, and you could connect disparate systems from a client-side perspective. What normally would take one person, 5 different tabs in their web browser, you can have one bot help bring all that together and then seal the deal at the end with the submission. And so we're doing that right now throughout our organization. Our next phase on that is to build that platform experience where we can break down those silos through process improvement, right? Business process improvement. And we're going to do that with tech, as you said, right? We got to do it all at once, right? So we're going to deploy the tech and deploy the improvement and deploy the data layer at the same time, right? And then keep iterating and building on that. And hopefully, at the end of the day, we get to become a more efficient organization overall.
Thank you, sir. Lorelie.
Yes, I think one strategy that is really valuable for my team and myself to use is to really, as we kick off a project and start to conduct meetings with any digital transformation initiative, it's really important for us to spend a lot of time in the discovery and requirements phase to really understand the current process, the current environment. What the business hears me say a lot as we start these meetings is I'll say, give me the lay of the land. Tell me what steps are you taking in your process, who's involved, who's impacted. The users of this is equally as important. And I think as we're able to step through and really understand the process from end to end, then we're able to have more productive conversations to pinpoint what works well, what doesn't, where can we streamline, what can we be doing better. And I think that's when we start to tackle some of those silos and come up with plans of how we can streamline our service delivery. And I think another thing too is as we're facilitating these conversations, it is very important to lean in on our soft skills, communication, as you said, and active listening, because we need to be able to steer and guide the conversations with our process owners and stakeholders to be able to clearly articulate the business needs and making sure that we're answering the question of what problems do we need to solve, and of them, what do we need to solve first?
Thank you. I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your insight.